So I'm 61 years old. As I think Eric Morecambe said, I was born at a very early age. In 1963 in Germany.
Germany? Wow.
Yeah. What was West Germany then? My dad's in the army, or was. He was an officer in the army, so he got posted around first class around the world. And at the time that I was born, yeah, they were in Germany, my mum, my dad. I've got 2 brothers. I did have 3. I did have a younger brother, but he died in 2012. And my first memories are in Singapore, where I think was where his next posting was. And while we were there, my brother was born, William. So he was born in 67, so we were there for at least that long. But I can remember some very hazy memories of Singaporean life, the heat, walking up the road you could hear, there was, apparently, I mean, my mum told me what it was you could hear, but I can remember walking up this lane towards our house, I can just picture it, and some trees on the left, and there was this clicking noise. You could hear this clicking, and she said that's the Chinese people playing mahjong.
Okay.
And they play in complete silence, and they're just constantly like this. It's a game that's completely beyond anyone else apart from the Chinese, I think. Apparently it's about building the Great Wall of China or something, so there we go. And I can remember being visited by the sugarcane man on his bicycle, and he had like great big shoots of sugarcane on the back of his bike, and he was it's obviously selling them, but I have managed to get hold of one somehow. I don't know whether I might just felt kind and gave me one, but I can remember chewing on that. And I can remember there was a nursery down the road where I went for presumably part of the day, and I can remember a great flood, like a monsoon flood, which I can remember being carried from the nursery back to our house, and the house was obviously full. It was a bungalow, so everything was gone. But I think it happened fairly often, so they might have, I don't know what they did, but and then I can remember visiting Tiger Balm Gardens, where the oddest thing, it was like a sort of a Hindu, don't know what their tradition is out there, but they were like literally pushing spears through their cheeks and tongue, and just weirdest things, and these spears in their backs, hooks, and like hanging great big decorative frames on them. So that was odd. All these things are just kind of like a big sort of dreamy kind of haze in my mind, you know. I can remember the flight back from Singapore, so that was in probably 68 or something like that. Then the next significant sort of part, we lived in Harrogate, I think, and a couple of other places, and then kind of eventually my mum and dad divorced. I'm not sure exactly when they divorced, but we ended up in Ashford in Kent, and that was about sort of 6, I think, and then I went off to boarding school, because as an army kid, an officer's kid, in the old days they used to pay the fees for any private school. So I sound very posh, but actually I'm dead working class, and come from a very humble family from my mum's side, particularly. My dad was a little bit better off, but of course he always handed a house, you know, with his officership. Eventually he did buy a house, but so it was me and my brothers and my mum in a terrace in Ashford. From there I went to this private school in Kent, in Tunbridge Wells, Royal Tunbridge Wells in Kent, atop a hill, and very strange place with very strange things went on there, and I think we in these day and age when they're uncovering things all the time, it's clear without going into it too much exactly what those things are. But it was all boys, but yes, it was very weird, and there are, some salacious kind of stories about what went on. One teacher just disappeared, and I remember asking the head teacher, "Where's he gone?" And he said, "Well, when you're a bit older, I'll tell you." So now I know. And there were stories to go along with that anyway, from coming back through the sort of grapevine, what those things were. So I didn't like being separated from my home life. I didn't enjoy being there like some people do. Hated sport, a lot of sport. I can just remember being sort of like stuck out on a cold field in the middle of February, supposedly playing rugby, just hoping the ball never comes near me, and same with football, just kind of like how kids play football, they just all follow the ball like this, so that was it. That's all I know about sport, really. I'm not too bad at running. That was okay. But I got into doing theatre. I did a few little plays, and then eventually got cast in the role of Joseph, and so that was my kind of first real taste of the glory of being sort of put on a pedestal a little bit, which didn't do me any good at all. But we did it at the school, and then there was an amateur theatre group which actually owned. If you know what an Oast House is, it's a thing. I don't know if they're exactly completely unique to Kent, but wherever their hops are grown, they have these circular buildings with a conical roof and a sort of strange weather vane type thing. I'm not sure what that does. I think the roof might change. I don't know. But they roast the hops in there, and this was an old Oast House, a couple of Oast Houses, which they converted into a theatre, and they took the Joseph play there, and so that started. I then joined the Oast House Theatre Company, Oast Theatre, and did several other plays, etc. During that time, my family was, so my mum was living alone with us, so single parent with 4 boys, in Kent, a small wood-framed house on a fairly major-ish road. And in about 1976, I think, there was a guy who was the musical director in quite a lot of I say quite a lot, probably only about 2 or 3, but he seemed to be always there, and he took a bit of a shine to me, I think, really, and eventually he became the lodger in our house, and yeah, he was an odd character. And he did, I would say, yeah, he abused me. He didn't go as far as some go, but it was definitely illegal. So that didn't help in my upbringing. That was when I was about 13, 14, 15, etc. Come to the end of my days at the prep school, then went on to a school in Cranbrook in Kent, which was a odd sort of school. It's a grammar school, but it's got borders as well. It's called a Queen's Grammar School, and I think there's more than one of them. So there's a certain sort of type of school. Anyway, I was a boarder, and I only lived like 9 miles down the road, which is odd. But my mum wasn't particularly kind of motherly, really, to be honest. So I went there. I did not get school. I didn't understand that, and no matter how much your parents tell you, unless you've got that real sort of connection with your parents, where you trust them wholeheartedly that what they say is actually important. You know, my dad would only see me I would only see him because I chose not to see him, because I didn't know him. And he was a scary, you know, and he literally talked like a major in the army, you know, absolutely had this very posh, well, his brothers don't have that posh voice, it's an army voice, got this army voice, you know. And so he was quite scary, and he was like, you know, you need to go to a decent university, and you need to, you know, but honestly, just completely over the top of my head. And I got into all the subterranean kind of activities in the school. That was all I was interested in, really, was, okay, you go to the lessons, but they were just an inconvenience, really. So I was a bad boy, and got into all sorts of trouble. Began to dabble with cannabis, and I was smoking, drinking, and eventually when I got to sixth form, I did like one term and I thought, this is not for me, and I just left and went and got a job in a supermarket, and left that to go after about 9 months. I did about 9 months in that supermarket, and then I decided I wanted to go to college. Not really because I had some great career plan, but because I didn't really have anything else to do, you know, and I thought, what can I do? And I thought, I can go to this place called West Kent College, which is the same college that Sophie Wessex went to. And I actually knew her. And it was when I saw her picture on the paper, when she first, this was looking about 90, well, in the 90s anyway, I just, you know, when she got engaged to Ed, I know her. And I thought, do I? Is it really? And I looked at where she went to school and when she went to college. And I thought, yeah, I did. Yeah, I've met her a few times, I think. Anyway, I'm sure she would remember me. So then I went to this West Kent College, and I floundered around there for quite a while. Tried a bit of this, tried a bit of that, and I eventually came out of there with an art A level, with a D. So that was the level of my, you know, my academic achievements. Four O levels, I think, and a D in art A level, and during that time, I got heavily involved in occultic things. I had this bedroom up in like a sort of an apex bedroom up in the roof of the building, and I painted it black and painted over the. It was very, very weird things that I used to get into. The music was all punky. I was really into that sort of style and the whole punk new wave thing. And to me, that was just life. That was what life was all about, you know. And but I was into the drugs, magic mushrooms. There was loads of places you could get them, and other sort of slightly harder drugs, but never heroin or anything like that. But I was, you know, enough into the sort of that kind of mindset which takes you outside of what's normal and boring, and you develop this kind of very cynical kind of overview of everything, where basically you've got the normies and you've got the people who understand and you know, who are in there. And as I say, I was heavily into the occult, although not I wasn't like part of a group or anything. It was kind of just me doing, you know, into all this. And there was this woman who I got involved with who was even more heavily involved in the occult, and she knew what was going on, and she got very into my head, and she was a bit of a witch, I think, really. So I was very, very screwed up at that time. That was when I was about 18-ish, 19 maybe. And anyway, so in that dark place, I do remember there were a couple of interesting things. I look back and I look at that period and I think there are some prophetic things that I can see now. When I did my art O level, I was basically, it was a sculpture based art O level, so and I was never a great painter or draftsman, or I'm not, still can't do that really, but I'm quite good at 3D stuff. I can sort of conceive that and do it. And I did a 3-part sculpture series for my O level. One was of the head of the devil, made out of clay with wooden horns, just your sort of classic devil look, got a goatee kind of look. One which was a plaster of Paris Mary with a cavity for her womb, if you like a sort of just like a cave inside this picture and this statue, and inside a red clay baby. So obviously we know who that is. And then my third one was of a stone chiseled slab, which I had made into, and if you can imagine like a tight piece of card or paper and punching your fist through it, it was a fist coming through this paper. So to me, looking back, I can see that's a prophetic thing. I was in the hands of the devil, and Jesus broke through. So that was for me. And you look at the Bible and you look at prophetic things that some of the prophets were told to do. I mean, some of them took years and years. I mean, people had to like go and marry prostitutes and lie on their side for like a year. And just the strangest things, and we think we understand God. And yes, obviously we do more than the people who have gone before because of the cross, because of Jesus. But actually, He's at work eternally in us from the beginning. And another one, when I did my art A level at West Kent College, the painting I did it just came out of my head on the day. I had nothing prepared. And I can't remember what the topic was. You get given a sort of a kind of this is what you've got to do, anger or whatever. And I can't remember what it was, but I did this picture of this desert with a black and purple sky, and there were 2 figures in the desert, wrapped up like mummies, joined with a rope, and they were both looking up like this, and they had sunglasses on, and there was the pinprick of light. You could see that they were looking up at a bright light. So to me, looking back at that now, that's myself and probably my wife, Justine, I would think, because at that time she was she was 7 years younger than me, so she was hardly there at all. And we were bound up, which is like a mummy, so we were dead. We were nevertheless joined together, and in this desert where there's no life, looking up at a light that's coming, a bright light that's shining on us. So it was that kind of reaction thing. And I had no idea that this was obviously going on, but I did have a certain sense of being drawn, I can remember walking through London seeing I think they were all, I'm not sure what kind of church it was, but they were all dressed in white, as if they looked like they would be nuns, but they're not nuns. They were just from a church where that's a tradition where maybe they just were when they went out. It was very striking, and they were talking about Jesus being alive. And I can remember it was Speaker's Corner, I think, somewhere around there, and Hyde Park. And I can remember exactly what I was doing, walking under this underpass. And I can remember thinking, what if Jesus is alive? Why isn't he on the news? And I can remember a voice saying to me, you don't want to think about that. You don't want to think about that. You don't think about that. It was like so real. And you just think it's yourself. That's kind of, you're swimming in it, aren't you, all the time, all that kind of spiritual stuff, and you don't know what your thoughts are and what aren't. But there was that, and there was another time when some monks came to the school before I went to West Kent College, and while they were there, I remember sitting there and seeing, in my mind's eye, it wasn't a visioning or anything, but it was just in my mind's eye, seeing Jesus just standing there with his arms out, like this, and me feeling that sense of him wanting me in some way to come to him. And I remember going home and lying on my bed and having that same image, and I can remember him, or at least me imagining him saying, "Come to me." And I can remember I was crying, and I said, I can't. Anyway, so messed up, screwed up, still at West Kent College, and I remember seeing, and I think it was during the holiday time, I was doing a bit of work at an old people's home. My mum was involved, she was a district nurse, and so she was in and out of all these places, and she knew someone there, the manager or whatever, and got me this job just cleaning, and it was springtime, so it was about this time of year, slightly later, but I remember seeing an interview on telly with Cliff Richard, and he was there was a question which went something like, if you have a situation where you have to choose between doing something right and doing something wrong, how do you choose? How do you do that? And I remember Cliff Richard saying, "Well, I just imagine what Jesus would do, and I'd do that." If I can, obviously not everyone does that, do they? But I thought, oh, yeah, makes sense. And I had been reading my Bible a little bit at school, but I was still involved with the occult and stuff, so there was a very big mixture going on. And I don't know how much later this was than the actual interview. It could have been the same day, it may have been weeks later, I don't know. But I remember doing my work at the old people's home, and I was just like cleaning the basins and all that sort of stuff, I remember praying, and I did pray occasionally. I prayed, "God, I really would like you to help me to do and say everything you want me to." And I just carried on with my work, and then I went to a different room and started cleaning in there, and it was next to a field. There was big windows and sunny day, nice white fluffy clouds, etc. And I looked out the window, and I was just, my jaw nearly hit the ground with the beauty of it. I looked out this window and I could not believe it was like heaven. I was looking at heaven, and all it was a field with some sheep and some daffodils and the sky and some clouds. That's it. But I'd never seen anything so beautiful in all my life. I was like, wow. And I didn't really I don't know how much I connected that with the prayer. I don't think I had really. But that started something was going on very, very deeply. And I remember sitting in the tea room at the old people's home, and there was a little tiny bit of grass outside, and then another bit of the building. And I remember, and I didn't see anything, but I could feel a giant cross. I could have drawn round it and told you where it was. It was just standing there, quietly, silently. So that was, all these things going on, being drawn, and eventually, now what did I do? It's all, the timing of everything's all a bit mixed up, so I'm not going to try and I couldn't ever work out what came first and what didn't. But at some point, what I did is I went to the church in the town where I went to grammar school, and they had a little bookstall just set out for anyone to just put some money in the box, take a book. So I took the book, but I didn't put any money in the box. And I thought, well, I will do. And I did, eventually. I went back and paid for it. But it was a book by Colin Urquhart, he's I don't know, I think he's probably still around. Mm-hmm. But is he? He's gone, is he? Yeah. but he was a faith teacher, yeah, but quite an early on, sort of based on sort of real solid putting your faith in what the Bible says and speaking it and etc. And there was a book called Anything You Ask, because I'd been told that the devil will give you anything you ask. And that was really that was my gig. That's why I was doing the whole occultic thing, was because I wanted stuff. And at some point I actually made, contact with demonic forces and made a bit of a deal, to be honest with you. But this whole book thing had happened before that, and I actually found myself writing. This was during the dark stuff. An agreement, and I was just imagining it. I was imagining it. I couldn't see anything. I couldn't feel anything particularly. I was just like imagining this whole thing, that there were like little gremlins kind of there and witnessing it, and I was writing this thing where basically I was just like giving my life over, and that's what led to the really deep dark stuff. But this book thing had happened before that, and in the book there's so it's very much a tussle between the very, very dark and this bright, glorious thing that was happening from the other side and pulling me one way and the other. And when I was reading this book, it said there's a little section that talks about writing a prayer. And it says, just write a prayer giving yourself to God, everything you are, all your hopes and your dreams and your goodness and your badness and your this and your that and everything else. And I thought, well, I'll do that. So I did it. I wrote this prayer, I put it in my Bible. And that was before I did this demonic stuff, giving my life over. And I didn't realise until afterwards that was significant. But God, I didn't become a Christian at that point when I wrote the prayer. It was just a statement, of intent from me at that point. And looking back, I can see that was God putting his foot first. But no matter what went on from that point on, I was his. Because I'd actually expressed it. And I put it in the Bible, forgot about it, and then got into all this stuff. So looking back, I can see that now. That it hadn't really reached its peak yet. I wasn't really a born again Christian at that time. I did have a very, very vivid dream. I had several vivid dreams. One particularly of being born. I can remember the sensation of being born, extraordinary. And when I was born, there were two figures in white waiting for me. So, that, again, another prophetic sort of thing. And in my spiritual kind of storm that was going on, it was a storm, in my mind and in my spirit and my heart, I really sensed the Holy Spirit one day just lifting me, like joy coming into me. And I thought, well, I've got to go to the church, because the church was open all the time, top of the village. And so up I went in the church, and I sat down, and I was just talking to God, and they had this brass cross on the table. It's not really an altar, is it? But it's a table up front. And I can remember looking at this cross, and I could remember seeing more than just the physical. So I was looking into the glorious. There was something amazing happening. I could see in this cross something really beyond anything that you can see or hear or feel on the earth. Kind of entering into me, like glorious and happy and joyful and powerful and wonderful. And I can remember that sensation being a kind of a claim on my life. And I can remember whether it was words or just thoughts that, I don't know, but anyway, the thought, give yourself to me. Everything you are, everything you have, everything you hope for. And I was just preparing to go to theatre school. I just got into theatre school in Bristol. And as soon as I heard that voice, I heard another voice, clear as day, saying, don't do it. Don't do it. You'll lose everything. And of course, at that time, being young and completely screwed up, I thought I was going to be like, butter on bread for the whole world, going to be the best at acting and singing and dancing and all that. Which of course I wouldn't have done. I would have crashed and burned quite badly. It was powerful what was coming to me through that cross, but this was also powerful. It was a sense, a little bit like, if you imagine a monkey putting his hand in a jar. They catch monkeys this way. They put stuff in a jar, and then they put their hand in the jar. They got the peanuts or whatever they are. They can't get their hands out. It's like that. I had hold of this dream. So I want to be, an actor and on the screen and this, that, and the other. And that was very real to me. And this all happened, I think, probably in a matter of a minute or two. All this stuff going on. And I can remember looking back up at the cross, and it was like God got the dial, which had been on 2, and he just went whop like that, turned it right up, and the glory that came down, and honestly, it was just shining on me and in my heart. And I just went, take it, everything, but take my life. So that was the point for me. That was the point when I truly was born again and became eternally saved. But the screwed upness didn't end there. It hasn't ended yet. That was 25, 42 years ago. Same year as Tim, 83, wasn't it?
83, yeah.
What time of year were you then?
Summer.
Summer. So I was just before you then.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I was already in. And anyway, I can remember I got well into it, and I was still doing the acting and stuff, and then I went to theatre school and hated it because I was so torn. And I just wanted to be vicar, because of course church people was all I ever knew. So that was the thing. But I stuck out the theatre school for 3 years. And then from there, I joined a sort of evangelistic organisation called Open Air Campaigners. We used to go to schools and out onto the streets in Bristol and Bath with a sketchboard, and used to paint stuff up on the sketchboard and use it to explain the gospel. And from there, I had various other jobs, like as hospital porter and a few temping jobs and stuff like that. And I ended up working 28 years for the Department for Work and Pensions, doing benefits and job centre and all that kind of thing. But in 2018, I had a major crash because I was very screwed up with my upbringing. No dad, all this kind of occult stuff, drugs, and the abuse that I'd received as well. And so what was my point? Oh yeah. So got to 2018, and having been married for 95 to 2018, however long that is, and having kids, there was a lot it was just compressed in me, over those years and throughout my upbringing and everything. It was just a great big pressurized canister that was just gonna go at some point, and I couldn't tell you exactly what it was about. But anyway, I up to the left, the family went to Barcelona because sun and sea and everything. I'd heard Barcelona was good for that, but I spent most of the time in the cannabis clubs. I have a condition, a muscle condition, but it's not something the doctors have been able to put their finger on. So they called it chronic fatigue syndrome, but it's not. I know it's not, but it's it's not a big thing, but it causes me quite a lot of fatigue and muscle fatigue and quite quickly when I'm doing stuff. And I went back into like smoking cannabis really to try and relieve that. And that got me into all sorts of trouble, and so that led to me leaving the family. Eventually I came back, kind of ended up back in the family again, but then it all happened again. So I was off again, and then ended up here. I was in and out of hospital with depression, severe depression.
That's right.
And anxiety and all that. And I even tried to take my life while I was in hospital. You don't know that, but I was actually stringing myself up on the back of the door. And one of the nurses came and at that moment and knocked on the door and found me doing it. And so that was, but I haven't felt like that. The Lord's really brought me through, and He's used a very bad situation to bring good, as He does quite a lot. One day I got a call when we were here, and it was from my daughter, said Mum's had an accident, so I had to go, and she was down on Mapleton Beach, and a great chunk of cliff had fallen on her. At this stage I was living here. In my mind, there was no way that we were ever going to go back together again. We were split up, and that was it. Anyway, Justine had broken her back, and it was terrible, and she went to hospital, and while she was there she had pneumonia and sepsis, which nearly took her life, and so much so that her brother, who was put down as the next of kin, was called in one night because she was going to go. They thought she was going to die that night, and I think probably that was the night that I was driving down here, but going home from the hospital, because I went in pretty much every day to see her, and even though she was out with tubes up her nose and all the rest of it for weeks, she was in a coma, like induced coma, while they tried to sort out this sepsis and everything else and operations and whatever. And I just started weeping, crying out to God from my heart like I've never really done before. It was just like I felt like a tube of toothpaste and it was being squeezed out of me. It was just coming out of me like that, And so it wasn't like a prayer, like, oh Lord, how we pray. We kind of go in a very sort of, almost like a formal kind of way. This was just like me spilling my guts before the Lord, really, which I think, to be honest, He quite likes that, really. I mean, he likes it. He responds to that, because if you look at the Psalms, it's full of all that kind of thing, And there was a turnaround, and she made it through. Amen. And she eventually came out, and as a result of me going in, there was a connection there again, and so I started going over to the house in Burton Pitsea, and eventually it became clear that God paid off our mortgage. We had 25 grand left on it, and I was given that money as an inheritance, exactly that amount of money at that time to pay off the mortgage. So, and then Justine has now been awarded ill health retirement, so she's officially retired now, and God has done a great thing and brought us together. So,
Amen.
I think the faithfulness of God throughout all that, and not just His faithfulness to not just in a response to us, but the eternal purpose of God. You look at your life and you think, God knew all this. You know, when he was doing all that stuff when I was 18, you just think, why can't God just like pick you up and put you in what you know at 61? But he can't. You've got to go through it. Everyone's got their own story, but God's faithful. And all we just got to remember to be like the sunflower and track the sun. Don't ever turn away, because that's when it all starts going horribly wrong.
Amen.
So yeah, that's it. That's pretty much
Thank
it.
you. Well done, Dom. Well done.
And I'm standing on a rock of ages, standing on a rock of ages, standing on a rock that'll never change. No, he'll never change.